Hey everybody, Miranda Pitrone here with you to do another mandala video. Big surprise, right? I've had a lot of requests to do a painting that I did recently of I called it a Tropical Flower Mandala, and it had great bright colors, and you can see a little part of it here on the screen. A lot of people have asked me how I did it, so I was going to try to show you the basics of it today in a video here. And I am actually kind of really excited about this because it's a little more challenging than some of the other basic mandalas that we've done in the past. So it's kind of a little step up. It's going to be super fun and you can do it, I promise. So what I did was I have this canvas here, and this one is a 6x9 canvas. And I started off in the center using the PBO paint. So what I did to kind of guide myself is I took a compass like this, and I found my center, and then I just drew a circle in to kind of give myself a guideline as to where I wanted to pour the PBO paint. Now I'm saying PBO paint like y'all know what I'm talking about, so I'm hoping you know, but if not, we have it here still. And you want the ones that say honeycomb effects, like down in here. So it's PBO Prisme Fantasy with the honeycomb effects. And the honeycomb effects will give you the look of the cells in the middle. That's what everyone calls them in pouring, because it has petroleum in the paint, and it will separate and make little cells like this. So you do have to shake it up really, really well. I know a lot of people read it, it says stir, you stir, and then, but mine said mix well, so I shook and shook and shook just to make sure that all that petroleum was mixed through the paint evenly. Then it says you can apply it with a dropper or a brush. I actually just pour it onto the canvas for these large circles, just because that way you're not manipulating the paint a lot and ruining your cells that might happen, and I just feel like the more you play with it, it ruins the effects. So, in my experience anyway. So I just found my circle and then I poured right in the center and then just let it kind of spread and let gravity kind of pull it into a circle and let it dry. And I actually let it dry overnight just to make sure that I wasn't going to be having it bleed into the other paints, because I'm not sure how they would mix wet on wet with acrylics. I haven't tried that yet. That's an experiment for another day. So all I did was pour the center, let it dry for 24 hours, and then the next day I started with the mandala. Now, because these are difficult to work with, they do not always pour into a perfect circle, which is exactly what happened with this one. So it's a little inside secret to this piece. And I don't mind it not being perfect. It's something I can work with. I actually kind of enjoy it. It makes each piece your own, and it's something that's also not easily duplicated. So I tend to not redo some of my pieces just for that point. So I make changes to them that are not necessarily what I had intended. So with this one, this is why I actually put the dots right on top of the PBO paint on the edges. They're right on the edge because I kind of wanted it to still look like a circle. So that was why I took the smoky color and put it over it and then did white dots on that, just to kind of pull your eye away from the fact that it wasn't a perfect circle. So shh, don't tell anyone. Alright, so for today, I actually had the same problem. I did my pour last night, and you can see, if I can adjust my camera here a little bit for you, the paint not only pooled to kind of one side, I don't know if my table is all of a sudden off kilter or what, but the cells did a fun little swirly thing. They're different all the way around. So there we go. So you can see all the little cells, but you can see here where it pooled more, they're a little bit thicker. And you can also see where I didn't stay in the lines. That's my pencil line from my compass. It didn't stay. That's fine. We can work with it. Don't stress. if that happens, it's not the end of the world. So you can see too, it didn't stay in a perfect circle. I had some points where it kind of flowed out on its own. It just kind of went crazy on its own out to the space where it wasn't supposed to. And that's fine. We had a couple of little rogue waves. Once again, we can work with that. So, the one that I did for this center was the PBO eggshell white with the honeycomb effects. Remember, honeycomb effects. And if you can't find them in your local craft store, which some of the places, I'm not sure if Michael's carries them, or I'm trying to think of what other shops y'all have, Hobby Lobby, ones like that. I did not purchase them there. I purchased them at a little mom and pop craft store that I have here in town that's actually closing, and I'm devastated, but that's besides the point. But they are available on Amazon, and I will put the link for that into the description for this video. So you'll have a link if you can't find them in your shops. You can go on Amazon online. Okay? So I started with the eggshell. So I think I'm gonna go with some kind of purples and teals, and we'll throw in some pinks and corals, of course, too. So kind of keep it tropical still, but it's not going to be the same exact colors as the one that I did before. I just want to say how much I appreciate y'all bearing with me, too, that I'm not, I don't know, the super organized, have everything in advance ahead of time, knowing, because I could just kind of feel like the mood I'm in for the day, or the music I've listened to, or there's so many other factors that have affected me throughout the day when I decide to paint something that it's not something that I can plan. So I appreciate you bearing with me as I wing it, which may be a little more difficult with the dot along that we're going to do live hopefully soon coming up here. But the beauty of this one is that you can pause the video when you need to and go back. Also, I will try to put all the tools that I use, as well as the colors that I will use for this one, because I don't know right now, so it'll be in the description afterwards. I'll list everything that you need. So there'll still be some preparation for you. Alright, now, in addition to that, I generally don't like to use pencils because I don't like to have pencil lines to erase. Plus, if it's not 100% dry, you end up getting erasure marks, the little pieces of eraser in your paint, and I feel like it makes a mess. Some people use chalk, which seems to work for them, the chalk pencils. I am going to use my etcher, I call it. It's a dotting tool that I broke the ball off the end one time trying to bend the tool, and it actually has turned into a wonderful tool for me. I don't ever want to lose it because it's perfect. It allows me to just kind of sketch on the canvas, and then if I want to go back and just take a little bit of water, or even after when I varnish it with a liquid varnish, the lines disappear. So I can just do that with a little bit of water. And the lines are gone. So that's my eraser. That just is easier for me. It's just the way that I found works. It doesn't have to be the only way, but that is what I'm going to use. Now, going back to this one, just so you get an idea, the canvas that I'm working with here is a little bit large. So this one was like a 6x9, I think it was, and then this one is an 8x10. So it's a little bit larger for our painting today. So a 8x10 canvas is what we'll be using. And then I just kind of draw out the flower design. But what you can do if you want your petals to all be the same is take a piece of cardstock or a piece of paper and draw it on there, and then you can place it at each spot to trace it so they'll all be the same. Alright, so I'm just going to give myself some guidelines here just because it makes it a little bit easier to keep things symmetrical that way. And I'm not measuring them just because I eyeball it, but what you can do is measure. If this is 8x10, you're going to go in 4, and then in 5, and in 5. if your center is totally in the circle. I mean, your circle is totally in the center. I can talk here. Otherwise, you're just gonna kind of have to eyeball about where you would put your plus sign and approximate. You'll have to estimate. So if you're measuring it out, yeah, you know my center is probably here, which really is not totally 5 over because we had a little bit of slippage. It's not perfect. So there'll be a little bit off with that, but you can make that work. And there's not going to be people coming up to your piece afterwards with a ruler saying, oh, you know what, it was 5.5 inches here and it was 6 inches here. It's going to be okay. So let me get rid of my face a little bit here. There we go. So you can kind of see here that I have just kind of estimated where my plus sign would be. Sorry, the autofocus on this is being temperamental today. There we go. Okay. So I have my plus sign. Then I'm just going to kind of gauge in the middle of each of those because I want to do as many petals as possible here. But like I said too, you can also use a protractor if you wanted, and that will get your exact angles. The compass will help, you know, making your circle, but it's not going to really help you with the angles unless you can get your point here. I just don't want to risk messing up our paint in the middle. That's part of the problem too. So if you have a point here and you put your pencil through, you can kind of draw lines to show where you want your petals. Does that make sense? So you can kind of have an even space along, but I am just eyeballing it for mine. Sorry, I'm still playing with the focus here. Still doesn't seem like it's 100%. Okay, so there we go. Now, like I said, you can draw one petal on a piece of cardstock and then kind of make that your template for all your other petals and move it around the canvas so then they'll all be the same petal. Or you can freehand it like this and just kind of wing it to see what fits in each space, because then they are not all going to be perfect anyway. So I just draw it out ahead of time, and then if I don't like it, I can always erase my lines with some water and redo it. Or if you have one that you like more than the other, you could always make a template of that petal. Oh, I'm doing the folded over ones too. And you want to leave a little bit of space in between these ones because we're going to have some overlap to make that petal look like it is folded over. Eventually all the petals, so they look like they're folded over. Alright, okay, so you know me thinking through and talking all these through. That's how I work usually, but to do the folded over petal, if you do your petals like this with a point, you can just take it from up here from your other point and connect it to where your curve started to kind of give it that look of it being folded over. Can you see it there? So that was how I did it originally, but now that I'm thinking about the process too and looking at my other piece, you could, if you wanted, if it would be easier for you, make your petals, actually, I almost licked my finger. No, we're gonna use water to erase our lines. I'm just gonna let that dry for a second. Okay, so I was saying how if you make your petal with a point like this, then you're able to just kind of connect the point at the top to your bend, and that makes the little part that'll look overlapped, like the petals are curling over one another. But if you don't want to do it that way, my brain is thinking of another way here for y'all, so let me move that shadow there. You can make your petals less rounded, less pointy and more rounded. So you make it a little wider at the top, like that. Maybe you can't see on that one. It's still damp. All right. Let's just do it here. So a little wider as you go to the top, and don't make a pointy petal, make it a wide base petal that's uniform all the way out. And then you can just do a very slight curve in the petal down to the bend and around. So that you can also do it that way to make your folds. So it just depends on which way works easier for your mind. If you do the pointy petals, like I have here, then I'm just pulling it out from the point down to the bend in the petal. So I'm going to go through and do mine. You go ahead and do yours, pause this, and then we will start painting. Okay, so we are going to start with the Decoart Americana line, and I'm going to use lavender, and that's going to be our dots all around here are the lavender. I'm going to just grab whatever tools I have closest. I have nail dotting tools, I have paint brushes. Somebody also sent me these crystallite rods, and that's about the size I'm thinking we could do for a dot right there. So rather than use the brushes, I might try and see if I can get a good dot using these for the big one along here. Let me see. For these big ones here. We'll see how it goes. And I know everyone uses different tools, so whatever tools you're using, you can still do this design. It's just whatever you would use for your large dots or small dots, you can just use the tools that you normally use and still be able to create this design. All right, so the purple. I'm just going to kind of fix our ring here around with the lavender, just to kind of overlap the boundaries of that PBO paint to just blend it. And I'm getting them as close as possible, but they don't have to be on top of one another because we are going to do little dots in the space between later on once these are dry. And the PBO paint it has a little ridge because they're thicker, so it will be a little difficult with your dots. Just be careful they don't run off into one another, so too much paint maybe is a bad plan. Just put as little as you can to get a good sized dot. I'm using the nail dotting stylus here. That's about a 3mm end. But like I said, yours does not have to be exactly the same. And again, this is just to kind of cover over the edges of the paint that I didn't babysit here, the PBO paint. And then to give our flower a nice round center here. Also, if you don't have PBO paint, you can still make this flower design. Just do your center in a different color, or you can even use just an acrylic pour in the center. I've done that as well, where you just mix up some paints with some flowing medium and then just pour an appropriate size circle for your piece. And actually, I probably should have mentioned how big my circle actually is. That would have been helpful. See, I'm learning as I go through all this too. My teachers in nursing school always said you can learn by teaching, which is so true. I never really actually thought about it, and I never ever thought about teaching. However, they would say you watch one, you do one, then you teach one, and then you almost never forget it. It's amazing how it just gets ingrained in your brain how to do it. And I never thought I'd be teaching how to do these. But it is so much fun, and I learn something every single time. It's so awesome. So learning by teaching, absolutely true. And I love all the comments. You guys just, everybody has different ways of doing things, so I love when you guys comment about how you did something differently or how you found a different product or a different way. It's awesome. So please keep those coming as well. Alright, so that is our center, and I'm going to measure that here for you. Just be careful not to get my wet paint. Wow, 3 inches on the nose. Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to pause my video and I'm going to let that dry for a little bit and prepare for doing the rest of our piece. Okay, so I think for the large dot here, I'm going to go with some Peacock Pearl. Maybe this side's better. Peacock Pearl. And I'm going to try these crystal rods and see how they go. But you can use whatever size dotting tool allows you to get a fairly large, let's see how it measures, just over 1/2 inch, well, almost 3/4 of an inch, just under 3/4 of an inch in diameter is this one. So I am going to dip that here in my palette. And then I'm going to go for the center of my petal here. And these leave kind of a little bubble in the center, it looks like, so I don't know if that goes away, but I plan on doing top dots on these anyway. So I'm going to go around here. And you do kind of pull your canvas. If your stretched canvas is not super taut, it does pull up on the canvas a little too. So I don't know, some of you may use these all the time and have it perfected, but It looks like it is going to leave that lump in the center, which you may like with the 3D, looking more 3D. But I want to put top dots on here too, so I might spread it out with one of my paintbrushes just to kind of alleviate the dot a little bit so that I can have my top dots go flat on it. I'm just going to see if I go ahead with another one if it's flatter. Hopefully it'll have the good coverage. Yep, a little bit. That's good. And these aren't super perfect circles, but you get the idea, and it's not a tool that I normally use, so it's a learning curve, I'm sure, with how these go. Just like with any tools. And then I can kind of push them into place anyway with my paintbrush, because I'm gonna squidge them down a little. I don't even know if that's a word, squidge, but we'll see. I might make up a new word. Alright, so I'm just gonna take my paintbrush here and just kind of drag it through to spread out the paint a little bit so that it is not, A, it'll dry faster, but B, that way I don't have that huge lump. These ones are already starting to dry. Oh, actually, I'll go with a different brush. These metallics dry actually pretty quickly, so I probably should have done it a little bit sooner, but it'll be okay. And actually on my camera I can see that that one's not totally round here, so I'm just gonna help it out a little bit there. Okay. Yeah, these ones use a lot of paint, these crystal rods, which may be great too if you guys are not looking to use syringes and you're looking to get more 3D dots. These rods might be your answer. There, okay. So that is going to dry a bit. Alright, so next I am going to use this Americana neon green. But you can just use any bright green that you have. Grasshopper green. They have a bunch of great colored greens from Decoart. And this one is a multi-surface paint, so it's a little bit thicker. You'll see. And I'm just going to go around that dot that we just made with the green. And I'm going to use a 1mm stylus. So I start at the top with my biggest dot, and then I just work my way around, and they get gradually smaller as you go around. Oh, this neon is starting to wear out faster than I wanted it to, but that's okay. When you get down to these smaller ones, you can also grab a smaller tool or just go way lighter and using the tool just like the paintbrushes, and you'll get a smaller dot. And then we'll do that all the way around for a ring of those around our blues. I like to have the part that I'm working on directly in front of me, just because I feel like, as far as the way my brain works, I need it in front of me to keep the symmetry, so I can line it up where I need it as I'm making the dots. But you can see that nice bright green, how it contrasts with the peacock and the purple. It's awesome. Like I said, this is a multi-surface paint, so the coverage is a little bit different, and also the neon colors are amazing after they're done, but they're a little more challenging to work with. But don't let that deter you, because they are fun, and they're nice and bright. You can see they're a little bit thicker, so if they don't make a perfect dot like these ones, kind of sucks it off. You can use a smaller dotting tool and just kind of fix it up there a little, just like that. Alright, so here's our green. Alright, now while I'm waiting for that round to dry, then I'm going to actually take the titanium white that I have and kind of do the outline of our petals where they start to fold over. And I like to start in the center of the area just so it's the largest dot here, and then as you work your way out to the edges and the paint tapers off your tool, then you start to get the smaller, more delicate dots, I guess. And same with coming down towards the inner part of the petal. And this way too, you kind of have some guidelines to follow. It makes it a little quicker. I think I'm going to carry the dots all the way down the petal here. One thing I'll say also is that I've had a lot of people say that their brush is not working, or it doesn't do the dots like they want it. So part of what you can see here is when you're dotting with the brush and you push down, I'm just kind of jiggling it a little bit into a circle. So it's not necessarily painting a circle, and I'm not using it like a dotting tool. You're actually just kind of, you wiggle it a little bit so that it makes that circle, and then as you go and you press lighter to make the smaller dots, you can still just kind of wiggle it a little bit. So if your point is too pointy or if it's flat from using it a lot, you just kind of wiggle it into a dot shape. I hope that makes sense. So if it's not a brand new brush, this one's an older brush, it gets kind of flat or it bends to one side, or depending on how often you use it for what things, it may be shaped a little different. You just kind of wiggle it into a dot, I guess. Also, a way to reshape your brushes is you can put them in boiling water and then just kind of run them along a paper towel to have them dry, and then lay them horizontally. You don't want to put your paintbrush's handle end up, because then when you tip them up, the water from washing the brush will get down in your ferrule here, and it will rust and ruin your brushes faster. So that's just another tip. But I'm really glad you guys asked those kind of questions or give me those comments, because I wouldn't know otherwise. And it's hard because you don't know what I'm thinking unless I'm saying it. So that's why I try to talk through everything. So, you know, the technique of this, maybe it just looks like in the video like I'm dotting like a dotting tool, but really I'm just kind of wiggling it at the end. Once you're touching the canvas, just kind of give the brush a little wiggle. And then you're kind of pushing the paint into a small circle that way. And a lot of times too, people will watch the ones on Instagram and see that it's just the sped up 1-minute video, which is not really meant to be a tutorial. It's just meant to be kind of like a satisfactory video and seeing the completion and creation on something. But you know, you can't see in those videos either that I'm giving it a little shake to make the circle on the brush, with the brush rather. And you can get pretty tiny with the dots on these brushes, but also I have another brush that I do use that I found recently, and it's a size 20. It's this Petite Spotter from Princeton. Let me see if I can show it in the camera there, how tiny that is. So that is the Princeton Select Petite Spotter. And those are for the really, 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 really tiny dots. But like I said, this one, you can go fairly small once most of the paint is off your brush, and the lighter you go, it keeps a fairly nice point, and you can just kind of do very, very tiny dots. Just like that. But it does take some practice. You know, a lot of times we want to get these things quick because we're so excited, but the process really and the journey will help you just kind of be calm and mindful, and at the end, when you're creating and not thinking about those things anymore, you can look back on it and see how far you have come in your journey. And I feel like the harder you work for something and the more you practice at it, it's really way more rewarding, for me anyway. In our fast-paced society, the give me it quick and instant gratification, then I maybe lost a little bit in that, but I kind of really enjoy putting in the effort for something and really just owning it, like really making it your own. Oops, I'm making a mess. Making something. And somebody asked also, I think last time, you know, how am I reloading and going back to the small dots? You're just pushing way less. Don't push down so hard. Just let it barely drip off. It's all about the pressure on the brush. So I can dip it and do a larger dot right away, or you can dip it and do small. But it just depends on the pressure that you're putting on the brush. Which is another thing, if you don't figure it out, if you're not thinking about it, it doesn't enter your mind, so. Which is totally fine, because that's how we all learn, right? We're sharing ideas and stuff with each other, and this worked for me, it didn't work for me, worked for you, it didn't work for her, then that's how you find your groove. One of the things too, when you're working with a piece this it's a little bit bigger, so there's multiple places that you can just work on while your other parts dry, but you also have to be careful not to stick your hand in it, or your wrist, or your elbow, or your hair. Alright, so there is the white outline on the overlap of our petal. Alright, let's go back to our green area here. And I think I'm going to try this sea glass, or do I want soft jade? Maybe I'll try soft jade here. And we'll do around the neon, one more round of this lighter green. And I'm still using the 1mm because I kind of want them to be about the same size. And this is a different kind of paint a little bit, so it's a little less thick at first, and then the neon with the phosphorescence in them, they just kind of behave a little differently. Alright, sorry about that here. Alright. Alright, so you get the idea. I'm going to go around it with the soft jade now. Okay, just for the interest of saving time, I paused it and finished up my soft jade just because I realized I'm getting up to almost an hour here. But I don't want to rush you through it. I just want to make sure that you know what I did. I just did the soft jade around all the green neons here. Okay, so next we're going to work on the outline of the other side of the petal with this Dazzling berry color. And that'll help delineate the other side of the petal. I'm just going to use that same 1mm dotting tool. Let's not get too complicated here. And I'm going to start in the center of my petal because I want the largest dots to be in the center of my petal, like I said. And then just kind of work your way up to the top where you have your white. And then it depends on how you shaped your petals or how close they are. Some of them might overlap and run into the white, and some you might have enough space to have it come down into the center of your flower like that. I actually have too much on my stylus, so I'm just going to drop it off over here where I want a bigger dot anyway. And you'll learn those tricks as you go, where you want to place things, or if you have too much on your tool, you can just drop it off somewhere, or if you have too little, you can also steal from dots that are wet on your canvas. There's lots of fun little things like that that you will learn as you go. And now see this one, rather than crowd it, I can make it go all the way down, or I can just have it stop at the white, just like where you would have overlapping petals on a flower. They're not all exactly the same, and I'm okay with that. So it just depends on how you want your design to go. I don't like to crowd them too far in, so I'm just gonna leave it there because I didn't have enough space to go all the way down to the center of my mandala. Same is gonna happen with this one. And so I'm just gonna stop at where the petal would naturally go in the same size and just stop dotting there. Okay. I really love these berry tones with this green and teal. Really just glad I didn't do the same colors over again. Because then I get a different piece also. And see, with this one, I'm back to having enough space to come all the way down to the center, so I'm just gonna go for it. But if you want yours perfectly symmetrical, then measuring out or stenciling your petals, that'll be more of an option that you'll want to take up if you really want to make sure that every piece has the same amount of dots and is perfectly aligned in your piece. And that's totally fine. It's absolutely fine to do it that way. Okay, we have a nice berry outline there. Okay, so I think our purple dots around our ring in the center are dry enough now that we can do some smaller dots around the outer edge of them and the spaces in between. And I'm gonna go with a lovely, lovely lilac meadow, so it's lighter to kind of complement the darker purple. And this is the petite spotter, but you probably don't have to use something this small if you have a small dotting tool or one like the etcher, or even if you want to go bigger so they overlap a little bit, that's fine too. But this is just what I grabbed. And I'm just going in between each of the dark purple lavenders that we put down. Now be mindful of where your hand is, because our wet paint is still drying. That's another good reason to have the part that you're working on right in front of you, because then you can maneuver a little bit better. But you can see how just doing those dots around really helped us delete the fact that our center circle wasn't perfect, and it wasn't a perfect circle. So you get the idea of how it can manipulate the eyes to see that it's not, that it looks more circle than it is. Alright, so the next part I have Americana grape juice, and it's a little bit of a darker purple, but I'm going to use darker on the beginning part, and then we'll do a graduated color to lighter at the top, do lighter purple, so you have that ombre effect. But the first ones I'm going to use are a darker purple. And I just have a bent dotting tool that I created here. It's one of the smaller, like less than a millimeter, whatever your smallest dotting tool would be. And I'm just doing, so let's do a few rows and see where we go. So one, I'm just starting on the outer edge and then inner, outer, and then however many I can fit without crowding too much. Oh, this one's a little thicker paint. And then I'm kind of going at an angle too, so you can see we start at the outer 2, 3, 4, but I'm going a little bit down into the petal on an angle so that when we get to the top you're going to get a little bit more of a curve. Alright, so I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 rows on that one. So I try to keep it about the same, just so you have about the same amount, but it does not have to be exact, because like I said, my petals are not all the perfect size and they're not all 100% uniform. Four, 8, 9. And see, this one's a little bit fatter. So I'll probably get more rows on this one and more dots across, so like this petal's just folded over a little more than the others. been so crazy our weather here. The geese don't know whether to fly south or not. They keep leaving and coming back. I just assumed my microphone picked that up, that you could hear the geese honking, but that's why I said that anyway. We've had 60-degree days down to negative 35 wind chills all in the past month. It's been just absolutely crazy weather. Okay. So then the next is going to be a lighter purple to finish, to go up towards the end of the petal. So I think actually we'll use the lavender that we used for the central. We'll use that again because it's just a shade lighter. And then we'll go to a little bit lighter all the way at the top. You can see too how I'm just kind of angling the dots so they start to head in a downward direction, and that just kind of gives the illusion of the shape of the petal also curling over, that type of idea. And I don't know, what did I do, 8 rows there, so about another 8 or 9 rows depending on your size of your petals. And that one's considerably less. Oh no, I just stuck my finger. We'll fix that after. Stuck my finger right in the turquoise. That's okay. Bloopers happen, right? Like I said, these are considerably less because the petals are a lot smaller. And that's not a big deal. It's nice to just have some variations throughout, and it's not worth getting stressed over. Just like dipping your finger in your paint. And then I think the last color purple that I'm going to use is a Lavender Fields. It is a multi-surface, but it's lighter. And it's really got a nice, rich, shiny light color. I like it a lot. Alright, so this is what the Lavender Fields looks like. And it is a multi-surface. But again, you can do it. It's fine. They're not that much different to work with, just a little bit thicker. And then it gives a nice gradient, I think, too. There's enough contrast, but enough gradient. Tried to cheat and grab paint. It didn't make a nice dot. That's okay. Okay, we're almost done with purples. All right, here are your purples. All right, I'm just gonna fix up this poor little guy here. Scrape off what I can. And then because I use the crystal rod, I'm going to use the same tool just because that usually gives you the basic same shape as you want all your other ones to be. Does that make sense? I want to kind of keep within the same shape. So if I use something different, you'll be able to probably tell that it was a different tool as opposed to all the other dots. Like I generally don't switch between dotting tools and brushes in the same zone of dots, if that makes sense. So if I did all these with the rod, I want to do them all with the rod. If I did all these with a tool, do them all with the tool, not switch to the brushes, because they will be different no matter how hard you try. So just kind of to keep more of your uniformity. Okay, so that little guy's fixed. Okay, so now because I want to keep with our tropical theme, I'm going to switch to some corals for some swipes above here, above our green. And coral will go great with these colors. I feel like it's a pretty versatile color actually, but the whole tropical idea that we have going on I think works pretty well. So, and I'm going to show you how to do the swipes with the dotting tools, just because I think that tends to be what more people have, and the brush is a little more challenging. So I'll show you with the dotting tools or swipes, and I'm going to do, let's see, coral blush, coral, and I also have coral shell as the lightest. And those are still all the Americanas, Decoart Americanas. So our darkest one is our coral blush, I think, here. Okay, so now thought process on this. You have quite a long distance to go from here to there. So you're going to need a little bit more paint, and you're dragging it out with a tool. So I have angled tools. I bent the tools that I have, and this one is a little bit larger end, but not as large as the 3mm. So you could practice on cardstock or a piece of paper next to your canvas just to kind of see how much paint you need and what size tool to drag your swipe from there to there on your canvas, because it's going to vary. So I just get a good amount on, and then I'm just going to slowly drag it. I know the swipe, swoosh, everyone thinks let's do it as fast as possible. But I'm just going to slowly drag it out, because you have more control if you do it slower on your canvas. So it's the coral blush, and I have a larger end stylus, and I'm getting a good amount on my thing, almost dripping off the stylus. And then I'm starting over to where the bottom of my bend and my petal is. And you just slowly arc it around the green dots that we put in. Now, if you don't have enough paint on your tool to go as far as you want it, you can do a double drag. So while this is wet, dip a smaller end or a smaller stylus in the same swipe, and you can drag the tail out a little longer if you want it to go farther. Just a little trick. I call it a double drag. I have no idea what people call it, but in painting I was enlightened and someone told me that these are called comma strokes. So if you're using a brush, it's a comma stroke. Also, if you get to this point here and you realize you don't have enough paint, you can always dip it again, put more paint on it, and then slowly take your time and drag your swipe around. But also too, you can make fatter swipes that way. If you're looking to do a thicker top part, you can do that, and then drag it around and your tail will get thinner. And see, I actually have too much here, but I only know that from experience. And this petal's a little bit smaller, so I had too much to drag. Like that. How are they going for you? The swipes aren't that scary. It's okay. See, now I don't have enough to drag that around because you'll learn to tell. And this petal is fatter, so I wanted a little bit more on my tool to drag it out. The bent tools also catch up a little more paint up under because you're kind of like making a scoop out of it. So I just find that more beneficial to myself, but you don't have to do that. You can use the flat tools. And then also I use my brushes. So with the brush, if I'm using the smaller brushes, I don't get as thick of a swipe, which is fine. You can make it thicker. But I really just heap the paint on the brushes. So there are your coral blushes. And then the next one is coral, just straight up coral. Americana. Just gonna use the same tool because we have about the same amount of space to cover. And I'm just gonna dip it. And then we're going to go above each of those swipes we just did with the straight coral. I'm kind of angling it back just a little bit, but not much. Just like that. And see, I don't have enough on there, so I got to double dip. And then drag the tail out parallel with your one next to it. And you can see too on that one that I just did. Oops, I dipped it in the wrong color. On that one that I just did, I went back and grabbed a little bit more of the tail because it didn't go as far as I wanted it to. I just went back and grabbed a little bit of that tail. Because once your paint's all the way off your tool, it's gone. So you can just grab that little tail, a little bit of it, just to stretch it out a little more. I have a ton of paint on for this one, so I'm actually going to do this fatter petal first. But like I said, that's just something you will experience. You'll start to see how much paint do I need for that length. I might even have too much on here now, but no, we're good. I'm not as adept with the dotting tools, but you get the idea. It's all about what you work with more often. You get more efficient with, obviously. More practice. Okay, so I don't have enough. I'm just going to go back and grab more and then slowly follow your other path. Those are our corals. Yay, it's looking super tropical now. But these colors go really nicely together and they highlight each other really nicely too. So I'm just gonna pop some of our lighter coral ones on here. And I want these a little bit smaller, but still about the same thickness, so I'm still using the same dotting tool. I just dipped it in the wrong color again. Alright, so same tool, but I'm gonna allow for a little bit less paint. Like ordinarily I wanted it to go farther, I would have put more on here, but I want them a little bit shorter for our top ones here. And I skipped that one because I had way too much on for this, for that size, because this petal is, like I said, it's a little bit shorter, curled over a little more, which in the grand scheme of things is not a problem. I like that it's different, being an individual. But you just have to learn how to work with your own sizing and your own piece within the confines of what you are comfortable with. Here we go. We're nice tropical babies. Love them. All right. So that is the basics of this tropical flower. Now what I did do is I put some more swipes on either side of these with colors that I found to be complementary. And then I did filigree. You don't have to do that. You can do a different design in here. I'm not really sure what I want to do with this one. I want to skip the filigree this time and try something different. But these are the basics on how to do the folded over petals. And then you can do different colored top dots and really just make it pop the way you want. So I hope you found this helpful, and I'm glad we had a chance to do it. I know it's running over a little the time, that it's a little bit longer than ordinarily, but there we go. I'll get it organized in here. So the PBO paints, take your time, enjoy the little adventure, choose your own colors. Yeah, just have fun with it. It's a fun design, not super complicated, and it looks really pretty, I think. So if you are looking to interact more with me other than just comments here on YouTube, I am on Facebook. For my art page, it is Miranda Pitrone Art. And I also am on Instagram, where I post these sped up. You can see the image from start to finish. Usually I do the videos on there again too. But also I have other art things on there and what's for sale in my Etsy shop. It's a whole another ball game over there. So also, if you are looking to get these videos first before anyone else, I always post them first to my Patreon community at patreon.com. And yeah, that's it for today. So I hope this was fun for you. I hope it wasn't too long. I know that happens sometimes, but I have a feeling our dot-alongs are going to go in that range of 2 hours probably as well. So I'm just coming up with some design ideas to do for that. All right. I hope you all have a great day, and happy painting.